Hey, what's up, everybody? I can't believe I'm up this late. It is 12:03 a.m. on May 26th, and I hope you all had a safe Memorial Day and were able to observe that holiday with the respect that it deserves. Um, I've been reflecting on a lot of things over the weekend, but one of them was something that I talked about with a host of a podcast I was on recently, and she was talking about some things that she was trying to write, and I had made the suggestion that she might get more engagement, she might get more traction if she fictionalized what she was trying to write, and if she wrote it as a parable or some kind of um, I don't want to say cautionary tale. I don't think that's right, but like a fictionalized account, and told the lesson that she was trying to teach through the narrative. And I've been thinking about my own writing and some of the criticism that I've received in the past from people, specifically the criticism that my writing doesn't always seem particularly focused on a niche audience. Sometimes I just talk about ideas. I like to just share ideas, and I don't do the marketing work, I guess, of really lasering in on a specific person and writing as if I'm writing to one person. I think one of the reasons I have a little bit of an aversion to doing that is because I don't want any one particular person in my life to feel called out. I don't want to feel like I'm lasering in on them and criticizing them or being unkind or whatever. Um, so I've been thinking about how to write some of the stuff that I'd like to write about. And every time I try to write it in a nonfiction way, it comes out not mean or ugly, but just a lot more pointed and um, problematic in various ways than I would like. And so I've decided to start writing maybe more fables and fictionalized kinds of narratives. And I enjoy writing fiction. I've been putting the proofreading pass or like final pass revisions um, on my novel that I've been working on for 15 years since law school. And, it's going well, I think. I've in the past edited the manuscript for the novel and chopped it down by as much as 50%, in several different rounds of revisions. And when I think about the shape that the novel was in, the first couple of drafts that I did, first couple of drafts of the manuscript, it was rough. That was an ugly baby. And there were things I loved about it and things that I thought were so awful and so wanting for craftsmanship that the manuscript might never see the light of day. And yet I was really excited to be writing it because I liked the fictional world that I had created to write in. And I liked some things about the narrative and whatnot. I thought parts of it were cool. Some of the ideas were cool, and I wanted to get it out there. And I've always held on to that, to those feelings, and that, and have returned whenever time and creative energy was available to the manuscript to try to rewrite it. And so this is probably the fifth, I think, time that I've finished the manuscript, but this time it's really going to stick. I don't have any intention to do substantive edits or rewrites or massive revisions anymore. At this point, I'm literally going through the manuscript and reading it the way I would read a novel off the shelf. And when I encounter a piece that I don't like, like a little turn of phrase or a word choice or something, I fix it. Right. That's all there is left for me to do on the novel. And as I'm doing that work, I'm finding myself becoming more comfortable, I think, writing fiction than writing nonfiction, which is surprising because I've always considered myself to be better at writing nonfiction, and maybe I am. Technically, I might be a better nonfiction writer. I might be a better, legal writer or technical writer than a writer of fiction. I don't think my prose is particularly special, you know? I don't think that I'm the next Hemingway or whatever. I don't think of myself very highly. But at the same time, it is passable, you know? It is good enough, I think. Like it doesn't hurt me to put it out there the way that it used to. I used to think of putting my, manuscript out there in the public space for other people to read and I would cringe. I don't anymore. I don't cringe. I don't think it's particularly special, but it's not the worst prose or whatever that's out there. My dialogue still, I feel like if I have one area for growth, like if I could just wave a magic wand and be the best at something, it would be dialogue. Um, I don't know. I feel like Joss Whedon has a knack for a certain kind of dialogue. I think Anne Rice does dialogue well. There's some sort of like popular writers of screenplays and novels and things that do dialogue quite well. I feel like Douglas Adams always did dialogue very, very well also. And um, Douglas Adams and Frank Herbert and Tolkien and um, I would say Isaac Asimov. I mean, like there are lots of really great writers that do a good job with various things. You know, Tolkien was the master of world building and a linguist, and he would invent languages and things. I mean, it's hard to beat Tolkien at his own game. I'm not even trying. Frank Herbert using like technology as metaphor, crafting massive worlds and narratives, and then Isaac Asimov doing the same thing, his treatment of time. And then I read a book earlier this year, I think it was. I think it was early, like January or February, and it was called "This Is How You Lose the Time War." And as I read that book, I really loved how so much of it wasn't really dialogue. The things that the characters said to each other, they weren't said in dialogue. Instead, for each little, I guess you could call it chapter or section, instead, there was a couple of pages, maybe 1 to 4 pages of, um, just narration, exposition of what was happening, and then there would be 1 to 5 pages or so of letters, because pretty much all of the dialogue in the book, not all of it, but the vast majority of it is really just them writing letters to each other. The 2, I guess, 2 protagonists. I think it has kind of a I think there's a single protagonist. That's something that people might want to debate. Um, but I think there is 1 protagonist, and then there's the love interest, if you will, or the counterpoint or whatever, or second protagonist if you insist. Um, and they write letters back and forth throughout the book, and it's great. And they don't really have uh, names so much as they just call each other red and blue and variations on that. It's very creative, very well done, and I find myself a little bit jealous of the freedom to sit there and just write a letter and have that be in the like that's the way you're doing dialogue. I mean, like what a easy free form way, because there's no, I mean, I'm not going to say there's no wrong way, but like a novel that consists entirely of exposition and love letters. Ah, I don't know. Dreadfully romantic for sure. but very creative and cool. I wonder how they got that through literary agents and publishing stuff. I think maybe it was submitted for awards. I think maybe that's how that novel came to be. I haven't looked too closely into it, but I have the sense or the impression that the manuscript may have been submitted for awards or part of a literary contest or something, one or more. I think it has won awards, and it definitely deserves the awards that it has won because it was one of the better fiction books that I've read in a long time. I'd say probably since I read Ted Chiang's collection of short stories in which Story of Your Life appears. I'd say since then, This Is How You Lose the Time War is the best thing I've read. Um, I just really, really enjoyed it. Can't say enough good about it. And it honestly inspired me to get back into writing my novel and finishing it. So I think that's the magic of really good uh, fiction is it inspires you to go be creative yourself. And um, I'm hoping that writing, I don't want to say writing less nonfiction because I'll still write my nonfiction stuff. I'll still bring that content to Substack and elsewhere. Um, I don't want to say writing less nonfiction. I'd say, but maybe shifting the focus of where I develop my craft to developing craft in writing fiction as a priority, slightly above, continuing to develop my craft in writing nonfiction. Like instead of seeing myself primarily as a nonfiction writer that dabbles in fiction, maybe inverting that. Um, I can see that in my future. And I can see myself also taking the advice that I gave that podcast host to kind of tie a bow on this whole ramble. Um, I can see myself taking that advice. And I primarily gave it to her because I thought, well, if you're stuck she was talking about being stuck writing some nonfiction stuff. I said, well, nothing says that you can't fictionalize it, write it as a fable or something, and use that as a teaching tool because people may zone out if you're telling them things, but if you're telling them a story, like if you're just telling them facts and opinions and whatever, like they may zone out and be thinking their own thoughts or their mind may wander. But if you're telling someone a story and it's an interesting story and you're telling it well, they tend to stay pretty engaged. And for a lot of human history, that's how we learned. That's why there are Aesop's fables. That's why there are, like all the Greek comedies and tragedies, the Iliad and the Odyssey, and all of that. Like ancient literature conveyed lessons and meaning through stories. I mean, the Bible does that quite well. Um, it's not meant to be read literally. Not every part of it is meant to be read literally. A lot of it is metaphor. A lot of it is allegory. And even Jesus, I mean, look at the way Jesus taught, arguably the greatest teacher of all time, regardless of what you believe about him. No one has reshaped the course of human history the way Jesus Christ did, regardless of whether you're a Christian or not, regardless of whether you believe he was who he claimed to be, etc. What if even if you completely check out of all the claims that Christianity makes about Jesus of Nazareth. He was the greatest teacher of all time. Some people might say Buddha, and I've even read a couple of academic papers that, claim that Buddha influenced Jesus, like he was one of Jesus's influences. And I think that was an interesting academic paper. I didn't ultimately find it all that persuasive, but I do think that Jesus probably had heard of Buddha and probably was familiar with some of his sayings or teachings at a peripheral level. I don't think he was an adherent or a Buddhist or a follower of Buddhism at all. Um, but I do think he was familiar with it because, he grew up in Nazareth and that was right on the trade route from India to Rome. So, it stands to reason that Buddhists would have passed that way on their way to Rome and that maybe he would have encountered them from time to time. Anyway, Jesus taught in parables He was the greatest teacher of all time, and he taught in parables. So if you want to be a good teacher, if you want to convey wisdom and that sort of thing, or lessons that you want to stick with people, I think telling stories is the way to do that. And I'm gonna tell some more stories. I'm gonna I'm gonna say some things, and I'm gonna say things that are difficult to say. I think things that people wouldn't necessarily even want to hear. Some of them, if they were said bluntly, directly, just telling you the facts. I think telling people stories is a way to invite them to consider something that they wouldn't at all ever consider if you just bluntly shotgunned those ideas at their face, with direct statements. Um, it's a softer approach, right? It doesn't it doesn't say, "Hey, you," and like challenge you with an idea. Instead, it says, "Have you heard the one about this?" And people are like, "Oh no, I haven't heard that one. Tell me about that." And you tell it, and they're like, "Hmm, that's very interesting." And they don't take it personally because they know that it's fiction. And yet they internalize it, they remember it, they associate it with things. It's interesting, the mechanics of fiction. Um, and those things tend to crop back up and come back out too when, like, you might hear a story, forget about it, and then you encounter a new situation. And when the facts are relevant again, that story sort of resurfaces, it sort of surges back to the um, forefront of your consciousness, like your brain's going, "Oh yeah, I have something for that," and then it serves up the story. And turns out you may have internalized the lesson after all. So great teaching method. Definitely makes it durable, makes lessons durable. And I'm looking forward to using more fiction. And I hope you'll consider doing the same. if this if any part of this talk has been interesting to you, if you've enjoyed it, if you've listened to it, if it's made you think, I'd love to hear what sort of story you would like to write or what kinds of lessons you'd like to teach in a fictionalized way and kind of a narrative way. And I'd love to hear whether or not you would like to talk to me about that. Would you like guidance or assistance or collaboration or just to talk shop? Because I'd love that. Feel free to reach out anytime. Just send me a message here on Substack and we can yap, as they say now. Oh my goodness. All right, well, that's it. It's now 12:21 and the palindrome says it's time to go to bed. Good night, all.